Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP, we've got Nick here in attendance, and we're going to be today going through our SmackDown recap. This is the SmackDown after the Royal Rumble event, which took place last weekend. So how about we get down into this as we see everything that took place on this episode of Friday Night SmackDown. So we would begin the night with a segment between Jey Uso and codyrhodes, and this would basically be a little bit of a talk between the two of them. Jay basically saying, like, I could choose you, I could choose Gunter, I still don't know. And Cody would basically say, like, look, no matter who you do choose, if you do choose me, then let me just put it out here right now. It's very unlikely that we'll be friends after this. They would have a little bit of back and forth between the two of them before they would be interrupted by Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga, obviously the new bloodline. And they would basically end up getting into a scrap with Jay and Cody, leaving the latter two standing tall at the end of the segment, and a match to be made for later on in the night between the four men. Then we will go over to our second contest, or a second little bit of action of the night, and this would be our first matchup as well. I have it down as Bianca Belair going one-on-one with Piper Niven, and that would be a qualifier for the Elimination Chamber match. Bianca Belair defeating Piper Niven in a result that I don't think anybody is surprised about. Bianca, one of the top women in the company right now, and has been for a long time. And she goes to the Elimination Chamber. Like you say, no surprises here, but it would take a big test of strength in order for her to get that KOD eventually in at the third time of asking in the end. But yeah, off to the Elimination Chamber she goes, second woman to qualify at this time, of the action. Then over to what would take place next. That would be a tag team contest between Pretty Deadly and DIY. We would see this match be made sort of impromptuly just before this would actually take place. Pretty Deadly would come out and interrupt Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, basically saying how, we've been doing a lot of stuff for you guys and you haven't really done anything for us. So we're starting to get a little bit tired and fed up of this now. I think they would use the term quid pro in recent weeks, and they wouldn't be getting their side of the deal back from DIY. But Nick Aldis would come out and say, like, look, you guys can have a match against against DIY, and you can have that match now. And Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, they'd be in their casual clothes, not ready for competition. And they, Pretty Deadly didn't care. They would rush down to the ring, and the match would take place immediately there and then. If Pretty Deadly would get the victory, then they would actually get a tag team championship match against DIY going forward. And it wouldn't be very long before this match would end. I think it was only about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. It would be quite a short one, quite surprisingly. And maybe because of the the casual clothing of DIY perhaps coming into play here, but it would be a little bit of tomfoolery from DIY originally, using the rope to try and score a victory. But actually, Pretty Deadly would be ready for it, and they would turn things around, and they would actually get the win via the exact same method. Referee not, being able to see the leverage on the ropes, and Elton Prince getting the victory for Pretty Deadly. They now get a tag team championship match going forward. But there's still loads of stuff in the background going on. We've got the likes of Motor City Machine Guns. We've got the likes of Street Profits. Los Garza are there in the mix too. So I think I could probably say that somebody else could be getting involved when this tag team championship match does take place. Perhaps maybe the Street Profits could be the leading candidates for that. And then we would go into our fourth segment of the night, our third match of the night as well. And this would be a triple threat contest for a qualifier for the Elimination Chamber. We have Drew McIntyre going up against LA Knight, as well as Jimmy Uso. So one man going to the Elimination Chamber, that would be Drew McIntyre, who would defeat LA Knight and Jimmy Uso. And I think this is definitely the correct call. Drew McIntyre, one of the top guys in the company for me personally. I think you'd probably agree with that one as well, Nick. But he deserves to be in all the big matches and, to continue sort of like, being in those bigger pictures. And himself in the Elimination Chamber, is where he needs to be for sure, 100%. Quite like the finish of this one, actually. LA Knight, he'd be looking to go for a BFT on Jimmy Uso. McIntyre would, turn up out of nowhere essentially, and he would go for a Claymore, hitting the back of the head actually of LA Knight. So Claymore, from a reverse angle, and that would allow LA Knight to fall and obviously hit the BFT on Jim Uso, taking him out, and then McIntyre going for the cover on LA Knight for the victory. Yeah, it's quite a nice end to the contest here, and the right winner for sure. What about you, Nick, though? What did you think of all these segments here to kickstart SmackDown, going into the middle sections, the right winners, and what do you think about that opening segment as well between the four men?
Yeah, so compared to Raw, for me personally, this SmackDown just felt like it flowed better. It told better stories. Just everything about it. In terms of SmackDown versus Raw at the moment, everything feels to me that it's coming up SmackDown. Without getting too far into that, maybe Raw and Netflix, maybe who has a say over what, maybe that's coming into play. But certainly a topic for another time, perhaps. I'm going to jump around a little bit in terms of how these segments are listed here, just because I think it makes sense. Jay coming out and pretending, I guess, to have the option to challenge Cody. I don't think any of us see that happening, and it doesn't make any sense. Why would they? But WWE, they're gonna draw this out and see how long they can continue to draw that out. And as we've seen the theme for the week and continue to see it throughout tonight, you know, why not? Let's just keep dragging it out. But anyways, so they set up the main event and Cody and Jay and the new bloodline. So we'll talk about that a little later. That being said, speaking of main event, I think the main event should have been Drew, LA Knight, and Jimmy challenging for that Elimination Chamber spot. Just everything about it was better. The promos, the in-ring action, and as you mentioned, the finish. They almost sold it like Drew kind of got two of them with that Claymore kick, and with this, I think we see, and what I think at least myself, and I think probably both of us and a lot of people hope that with Drew qualifying for this elimination chamber match, that maybe we can get Drew and Cody. I think that would be a hell of a match, and really hoping that's the one we get for Mania. Drew deserves it. We can talk about that later if he were to get that, if he would win, if we get there, or if he doesn't, we can talk about how we wish he would have. But yeah, like even the promos beforehand were just all three of them absolutely cooked in my opinion. It just felt like a main event match. But yeah, Drew winning here is the right call, and my goodness, the Elimination Chamber is looking absolutely delicious at this point. Bianca Belair winning, as you mentioned, not a surprise to anyone. My one beef with this is that we're just kind of pretending that little bit from the Rumble where Bianca and Naomi they had a bit of a scuffle. Not really, but Naomi meeting up with Jordan Grace and Bianca kind of being like, "Hey, what's this all about?" It wasn't touched on in the slightest. If it was, I completely missed it, but I don't think it was. And further to the Jade and that story and where the hell that is going. I guess we're just putting it on hold again. I really would love to see some kind of resolution there. Just pretending like it's not happening, and even so, further pushing it away. The longer they wait, the less people are going to care about it when it actually does happen. So, would love to see that. I know it's Mania season, but let's see something develop on that term, because as of now, it's just kind of sitting there, and as further away, I think it loses importance. Pretty Deadly winning was a great surprise, and I was kind of surprised to see DIY actually compete in their street clothes. You don't see that very often. You always say, well, "I'm not even ready," and they'll have the match later and stuff. But no, they did it. They did it in the jeans. I can't imagine that being super easy. But yeah, a nice surprise to see Pretty Deadly win. Hopefully, as I mentioned in my Rumble reactions, hopefully we get some big tag match at Mania with all these big teams, as you mentioned, going up, maybe a ladder match or something. So still holding out hope for that. But yeah, SmackDown division is looking great.
I do agree. It is looking pretty great right now. I think there were some big things happening on the show, and we didn't quite end there with everything that took place on this episode of Friday Night SmackDown, because the action would continue. Next up, we would go into a one-on-one match that would be off the back of the Royal Rumble. We'd have a little bit of a thing between Carmelo Hayes and Akira Tozawa during the Rumble match, where Carmelo would actually take out Akira on his way to the ring. Carmelo had just been eliminated at this point, and yeah, Akira Tozawa, he'd be obviously disappointed, couldn't take place in the Royal Rumble matchup. and he would have a chance here to get back at Carmelo. You know, it's never going to get his Royal Rumble appearance back, but it is going to allow him to get a victory over Carmelo Hayes. But that wouldn't happen because Carmelo would go into this match. He'd have a pretty competitive contest actually with Akira. It was actually quite a good watch. I quite enjoyed it. But yeah, no real shock here. Carmelo Hayes defeating Akira Tozawa and getting the 1-2-3. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to see Carmelo with his first win since the Best of 7 series with Andrade. I think someone of his talent shouldn't be going that long without a victory in one-on-one singles action. So yeah, glad to see him back in the winners column once again. You know, he's been having a lot of misses recently, which is something that Melo does not do. Then we'll go over into our next segment of the night, which would be a promo between Charlotte Flair and eventually Tiffany Stratton. So step 3 of Charlotte's interactions with all the women's champions of WWE or WWE. Charlotte would approach this one almost, I felt like, trying to be that sort of like heel persona that, maybe is an exact contrast from what she tried doing on Raw originally. And the crowd were actually cheering Charlotte at the start, which is kind of strange. It's just a weird mentality here. It's like whatever Charlotte Flair does, the crowd do the opposite. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird vibe. But either way, she would basically just say, how like she could be challenging Tiffany Stratton. Eventually, she would come out and get involved as well in the conversation. And they would sort of like decide to, they try and build up the situation as well there from there on. It would be Tiffany Stratton essentially going down this route that I guess Rhea Ripley kind of went down as well. And the champion essentially trying to prove themselves to Charlotte Flair, saying, pick me. I don't know if I'm a fan of the champions coming out saying, oh, pick me, pick me. I think if it's me personally, like say for example, if I was to be a champion, I think I'd want the challenger to challenge me, based off of them just picking me. I don't really care if they want to or not, but I guess, there's maybe a hint of wanting to be in the main event, perhaps from Tiffany and Rhea Ripley. Julia didn't really give me that kind of vibe, which, is obviously a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, in terms of Tiffany Stratton and how she handled this, it was literally like she was saying, "Oh, please pick me, Charlotte. Look, I'm almost begging you." And Charlotte even mentioned that. She said, "Like, if you really are demanding me to pick you, get on your knees, beg me." She didn't end up doing that. Nia Jax will come out and interrupt it. The discussion between the two of them. But yeah, it would be a case of Tiffany Stratton going one-on-one with Nia Jax next week on SmackDown in a rematch essentially for the Women's Championship. And that's what Tiffany will need to focus on next. But Charlotte said, "Oh, this is getting interesting. I'll let you guys sort this out before I make any rash decisions." Then we go over into our next little bit of action. We'd have a one-on-one matchup between Alexa Bliss and Candice LeRae. That would be an Elimination Chamber qualifying match between the two women. Alexa Bliss in her first singles match since losing to Bianca Belair in January of 2 years ago, which is just kind of crazy. It's been a long time for Alexa, and yeah, she's finally back in competing, and she looked pretty good, to be fair. One-on-one match with Candice LeRae, I think it's a great place to start. Someone like Candice, you're going to have a pretty decent match with, and yeah, just got her feet off the off the ground, and got a win. Alexa Bliss goes to Elimination Chamber. She's back. She's going to the EC, and yeah, I don't disagree with this result. I think it's the right call, and Candice, she's making more appearances as of this year, and ultimately that's doing well for her. But yeah, I think Alexa Bliss being in that Elimination Chamber match is definitely the right call. And then into the main event, which would be wouldn't be. Let's start that again. Then we go into the main event, which would be Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso taking on Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga. It would be Cody and Jey that would eventually win this contest. And after the match, we'd have the two celebrating before we'd have the return of Solo Sikoa. Solo would unleash a Samoan spike onto Cody Rhodes, laying him out in the middle of the ring. And I guess this is where we're going next. Solo against Cody. I think we've done this a couple of times before, haven't we? So I don't know why we're doing this again. It seems like a step in the reverse direction here, step backwards. So I'm not entirely sure what this is about, why we're getting this again, but that seems to be where we're going. I don't know. It is what it is. Either way, they get the win. Solo would attack. He'd return after losing the match against Roman Reigns, no longer being the tribal chief. And I guess now we know what Solo's going to next. Nick, what do you think about everything that I've just spoken about here? Disagree, or do you agree with Solo's actions? Do you want to see that again? I'm assuming not, but do you? Alexa Bliss winning, right? Cool, I'm assuming. And then obviously Carmelo Hayes, getting a good victory for himself over Akira Tozawa. And then that interaction between Charlotte and Tiffany. What do you think?
Yeah, and mentioned earlier, like every segment felt important. You could argue if there was one that didn't feel important, it's Akira and Carmelo. But you've heard the griping on Carmelo and how he's been handled on Main so far. But even when he loses, it just feels like it's important. It feels like he's going to be a big player for a long time. But I think we can all agree if Carmelo had lost this match, then we would be very concerned, and an actual concern would be warranted. But yeah, of course he wins. We'll see if they're going to take that story anywhere else. Hopefully not. Carmelo needs to move on and move up. Charlotte and Tiffy. Yeah, this was interesting. As we've talked about on the earlier week's podcast, Charlotte really had to do like basically a full 180 all week almost. Each promo, each time she came out, Raw, NXT, SmackDown, felt a little different. With this one, she came out and it almost felt like she was like, okay, let me go ahead and see how this crowd is feeling. Let's go ahead and get your temperature, see how you feel towards me. And as you mentioned, there were some cheers. So, and that's just very much nature of the beast. You're going to Chicago and, coast to coast, you're going to LA, you're going to get very different reactions. You're going to get the diehards from Philly. You're going to get very different reactions for each person, depending on where you're from, depending on who's involved, where the talent is from. It always comes into play. So I think it's just the nature of the beast and one they are used to dealing with. That being said, I think Charlotte's biggest weakness has always been the promo game. So I think she handled that pretty well. I think she's handled it pretty well in terms of she came out the beginning of the week as babyface, and I think it's clear that at very, very best, she's going to have to be a bit of a tweener and kind of weigh her crowd on a day-by-day basis. And also that plays into part, who she's going to end up going against. I think most of us think this is the matchup we're getting. And yeah, I think she needs to be a heel regardless of who she's going up against. I think most of us can agree to that. That being said, I felt like Tiffany did a great job of holding her own here. I was kind of worried that maybe Charlotte would bury her a little bit in terms of the promo work, but I felt like she did a great job. She definitely held her own. Charlotte asking her to get down and beg, that was strange. That was weird. And as you mentioned, you know, I don't feel like the champion should be doing that, babyface or heel. Like, why do I care if you're going to challenge me? If anything, I think you could make the case if we're using our brains. I don't want Charlotte to challenge me in Mania. I don't want one of the most dominant women in WWE history to challenge me for my title. No, go challenge somewhere else. I don't care. But yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, shades of an era that hopefully is far in our past, with the baking bit. That was odd. But yeah, I think, and then Charlotte mentioning that after Nia comes out, I think I'll just wait and see who wins. Nia announcing that she's challenging Tiffany next weekend. And the crowd went absolutely wild for that one. I don't think anyone wants to see Nia and Charlotte. So hopefully the title stays on Tiffany, and I'm quite positive will be the match that we're getting. So looking forward to that. Yeah, Alexa being back, some of her movesets seemed like they were a little off. I don't know if that's by design or maybe a bit more ring rust now that she's not in a rumble and, more focused. But yeah, I think her winning is the right choice. And even as you said, it's been 2 years, so even if it was a bit of ring rust, fine. Or if she's changing up her moveset, I think that's great and a welcome change as well. Main event. Again, I'm not so sure there should have been in the main event. I think the only argument you could have for that being the main event is Solo, quote unquote, returning, because it has been gone that long to call it a return. I don't know. But as you mentioned, we're getting Cody versus a Samoan. Have we seen this before, KB? I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess if that's where we're going with this, give it to us at Elimination Chamber so we can move on. Let Cody go up against someone that's not Samoan. And again, no offense to them, but we've seen that a few times at least, I think. Um, I don't want that at Mania again. No offense to Solo or anyone from the New Bloodline, or even Roman for that fact. I don't want to see him. Gave me Cody and Drew. Let's do that. Um, anyways, no, won't fantasy book here, but yeah, it was a really good episode of SmackDown. Again, every single segment just felt really important. I gave this one like a 9.5 out of 10. Just everything was important. And we need to talk about the a couple of segments that aren't even listed here. Damian Priest, Braun Strowman, discussion backstage about Jacob Fatu and that triple threat match. My goodness, what a match that'll be. And I think just for the qualifiers we've seen so far on SmackDown and Raw, SmackDown's holding triple threats and Raw's holding one-on-ones. So I think it's just kind of a testament of how much better SmackDown's doing right now. And then there's also a segment of Kevin Owens calling Sami Zayn a bad friend from his car. Have we ever seen KO? I don't know. KO calling someone else a bad friend just seems like a bit of hypocrisy, right? He's got to be the world's worst friend in history of just anything, right? But yeah, great episode of SmackDown. Curious to hear your thoughts on this one overall as well, KP.
Yeah, it was a good episode. I think there were some genuinely good points to take away from this one. Obviously, Drew McIntyre is my main highlight of the night, getting back into the conversation. Ultimately, I think that with Drew, it's one of those cases where we sort of like watch him rise a little bit to eventually watch him fall at the final hurdle. So I didn't expect him to win the Elimination Chamber because, based on recent times, I think WWE's taught me to not invest too much hope in his title ambitions. But yeah, I'd love to see him against Cody Rhodes. Like you said, that'd be a great match. I think, it's something that we haven't seen in quite some time. I think we're going back. I think Cody's actual last singles loss was to Drew McIntyre, if I'm correct there. I think you'd have to double fact me on that one, but I think that actually might be correct. But yeah, Alexa Bliss, ultimately just glad to see her back in action, after a couple of years away, and she'll be in the Elimination Chamber, which is great to see. And yeah, I think just a general across the show, it just felt a lot better than Raw. I don't think it's quite the level of NXT from this week, but I give it a solid 7 out of 10. Definitely, enjoyed it and, didn't want to just basically just fall asleep halfway through. And I can agree with the decisions that are being made here as well, except for perhaps that, the return of Solo and going after Cody once again. I don't think we have seen that before, to answer your question, but I don't think we need to see it this time, But yeah, it is what it is. 7 out of 10. I think it was a pretty good show overall. And yeah, not a bad show comparatively speaking for the likes of Monday Night Raw, especially. But there you go, guys. That is our recap of Friday Night SmackDown. We're going into the next week, coming up with Raw coming up on Monday. So yeah, basically just continuing to build for the Elimination Chamber and just to see where the road takes us. We know a few people who are qualified for both matches. The scenes are starting to be set, and I'm sure we're going to get a couple more answers regarding those very, very soon as well. Just before we do head off, anything you want to say, Nick, about the week in general before we do close this one out?
Yeah, both Elimination Chamber matches are looking really good so far, especially the men's. My goodness, really excited for that. And yeah, Vengeance Day coming up this weekend. I imagine we'll do a predictions and reactions video for that as well. Along with we're going to start releasing these videos. In the past, we've done them as kind of one just as the week, rather lengthy videos. I think going forward, just going to release these by show, a little easier to watch, and maybe help those who are interested in one show over another. If you're if like myself prefer SmackDown over Raw and NXT, or vice versa, you can kind of get into which video you want to watch a lot easier that way. So yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, Mania season. We got PLE coming up next weekend and a couple weekends after. And yeah, this is the best time of the year to be a wrestling fan.
That it is, yes. The road to WrestleMania, it's an exciting time for sure. Hopefully it does pick up a little bit of steam because at the moment I'm struggling. But yeah, stand and deliver. That's something I'm really keen for. But obviously we got Vengeance Day. Definitely be putting out a video for that one. Predictions, reactions, all that jazz. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one, I suppose, which will be Raw recap again. So guys, thank you for tuning in. If you like what we did here, then please hit a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be doing a lot more of these, as Nick mentioned a moment ago. And yeah, we'd love to hear what you think in the comments as well, whether good or bad, agree, disagree, whatever you like. Thanks very much, guys, for tuning in. This has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you very much, and goodbye.